Hi everyone. Let me start with a story. The year is 1993. Bill Clinton becomes the first, or 42nd, sorry, not the first, President of the United States of America. Jurassic Park becomes a hit movie. And I was just a happy little 3-year-old with nothing to worry about. But we're not here to talk about that, right? We're here to talk about the internet. And you know what also happened in 1993? Well, this guy, this dude, this Sir Tim Berners-Lee from CERN University, he released the World Wide Web to the public for the first time, for free. And back then, the web, well, it was revolutionary, but it was quite different than you know it today. I mean, it was actually kind of boring. You see, the web in 1993 was just a collection of pages and links and articles linking between one another, but it lacked something that was added only 2 years later. You know what happened 2 years later? CSS also happened a couple of years later, but not just CSS. We're talking about HTML2. When HTML2, it changed everything we know about the web. The web is what it is today due to HTML2, because HTML2 brought one very important feature that lacked in HTML version 1, which was the form element. You see, up until then, people could not publish information to a web page, and suddenly there is a standardized way of sending data back to the server so you can post, purchase, search, subscribe, like, comment, what else? Upload media. The web is a application delivery platform, and the most commonly used application delivery platform due to the form element, the simple form element. But this brings a big problem, because when you let users just send data to the web, like to the server, you get a whole new can of worms, because you have like spammers, scammers, bad actors. You have, I don't know, people just don't know what to do and how to publish information correctly without making errors. And this is what form validation is for. And we have typically two types of form validation. We have user experience form validation, that is there to let people know before they reach out to the server that something's up with their information, that it doesn't look good, that it doesn't work good, that it doesn't feel well or fit what we expect on the server. And the second type is for security and integrity, which means that we know, as the owners of the website, as the server runners, we know that the data the user sends is okay to save, is okay to process, and is okay to display to the next user afterwards. And, well, I'm Eviatar. I'm a front-end engineer at Meta, as Jonathan introduced me. I work on many open source projects. One of them is Vest, which I'm going to introduce to you today. I live with my wife and my cat, and I usually try to sleep a lot. If you want to follow on my work, you can go to my website. There is a list of projects over there, and also on Twitter I try to sometimes update. Now, Vest is a form validations library that's inspired by unit testing tools like Mocha or Jest. It takes their declarative styles and puts it into use for a different purpose completely. And what is the problem with form validation? I mean, it's there since 1995, as we've already shown. We've been doing it for years now. Why make something new for form validation? What's wrong that we have to use form validation with a whole new library? And we first have to see how form validation typically looks. Now, this is a React example. You don't have to know React to understand it. What we have here is similar in every library almost, or even without a library at all. We have the change handler in which we get the data and the name of the field, and then we check stuff. We check if the username is too long and if the username is empty, and we check, I don't know, the password and if it matches some criteria, and a whole lot of logic that we put into our code. And yes, we can hide it away and put it in a function, but even then, it's really, really hard to follow, to maintain, to change, And well, there are three problems with this in the conventional types of form validation. First, we do not have any concrete structure. We do not know where to put the form validation. We don't know how it should look. There is no special syntax for form validation. I mean, there are libraries that try to do it, but still we are left with a problem of how it fits into our feature. And we usually do end up making it work, like by cramming lots of code into the feature and some outside and using some libraries, but when you come back to maintain it like months later, you have the big problem of, well, this doesn't fit my initial design. And of course, because we did not have an initial design. And then we have to disassemble everything we've done. We have to reassemble that and then make it work. Again, a lot of wasted effort. And the third problem we have with form validation is tests. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, form validations or forms in general are the interaction heavy parts of our apps, which means that's where our users click, touch, scroll, type, navigate. They do everything inside, which means they are the most likely to encounter bugs there because that's where they do all their stuff. But also because these are the interaction heavy parts of our apps, it means these are the hardest to test, because in order to actually test these, we have to first simulate the events and we have to make sure the data gets in correctly. And then, well, we end up not testing that, and then we have more bugs. And what's the problem with that? Well, forms are where our money comes to the company, because that's where they do the checkout, and that's where they post their images, and that's where they do everything on our apps. So I must not be the only one who thought of this problem. There may be millions of people who actually experience it, developers who try to think about a solution. And this is an image from about a year ago. I'm searching for validation on NPM. At the moment, there are more than 10,000, not just 9,000. So yeah, problem solved, right? Well, no, you see that there are more and more libraries coming and this ecosystem gets bigger because this is still a problem. People still need a solution for form validation. And well, what types of form validation are there? We saw 10,000 of them. Well, they're all the same? Well, I'd say no. There are three types, usually, of form validation libraries that I can identify easily. One is the function matchers, for example, longer than, shorter than, is email, is credit card, stuff like that, which is very good, very useful, and some of them are actually the best. But they do not solve our problem from before, the structure problem. They do not think about our feature, they only think about simple data form. We can use them, we should use them, some of them are really, really good, but we have to combine it with something else, and they look somewhat like this. Now, one of the more common solutions for form validation is schema validation libraries that build upon that previous concept. We take these functional matchers and then we arrange them in a JSON structure so we can basically make sure that the entirety of our data matches some criteria. Something like this. This is one of the schema validation libraries. And this is also good. This is really amazing, but mostly for an API level. On the client, this is mostly wasted effort, because what we have here, well, if I type inside the username form or in the username input, then I have to go through the schema again, and then everything gets validated. So I either only validate on submit, or I filter out the results that the user of the fields that the user did not add input to. Well, that kind of sucks, and well, we should do better. And the third type, I think, is the most common one in the world of the frameworks, is a UI library or UI framework that's intended to use with one UI library like React, Angular, or Vue, that basically give you event handler or components or different functions that you can embed into your logic, and then they take some control, but they manage everything for you. You must use some of them in your experience. And these are actually pretty great, but they have one problem, which is vendor locking. Now you're stuck using one framework, for example, Angular or Vue or React. You cannot share validations between the client and the server, and if you do, you have to extract it out of that because it's not a part of the validation of that framework. And on top of that, because they give you their own event handlers, or they give you their own functions or their own components, well, they take away some of the control you have over your UI. And then what it means is that when you need some special abilities, oh, you're out of luck. You cannot overcome that. So I was looking for a solution like years ago, 2016, 2017, and I was trying to think, what would an ideal solution look like? At around the same time, I was looking at unit testing for the same time, back then with Mocha, later with Jest, and it looked something like this. We have our topmost describe. Inside of it, we have different tests that describe different scenarios our code goes through, and then we have the expectation. And this is very similar to the way I think about form validation, because I have my topmost suite, or my form, and inside of it I have different fields that I have to validate against some criteria to see if the data matches my expectation. So I tried to play with this concept back then in 2017, and I came up with this. First of all, I have a suite, form validation suite. It takes the data from the form. Inside of it, I add my fields, my test for the different fields, very similar to what we've seen in the unit testing world, only with a slight change that add in the username input or the name of the field that we're changing. So for example, username is required. And inside of it, instead of expect, we're adding enforce, which is very similar, works exactly like expect, but only that it's more suitable for form validation in syntax and style. Now, just wait a second. I'm going to demo it with a live code. So let's pause for a second. Pray to the gods of live demos. Everything worked correctly. Okay, let's do it. Now, just before I begin, the example I'm going to show you is going to be in React. You don't have to know React. Mostly is going to be inside Vest. And actually, Vest works with any framework out there. So whatever it is you use, Vest knows how to do it. Okay. Wish me luck. I'm opening up a new app. It's a form. It has no validations in it whatsoever. I try to submit. I try to type. Nothing happens. Now, what I have in this form is very simple. It's just a change handler that updates the state of the form. I have some pending state that I will uncomment later that just adds a spinner to the username input. Okay. I added a messages array as a prop to the input component. It's a simple input component that only takes an array of messages and then displays it on the username input or whatever input that I type in. And I added a few class names just for style, so you can see later. For example, class name, and let's see, error, which turns it red. And I did also success, and success, double S. Yes, and I also did warning. So that's all we have ready or pre-made. All the rest we're going to do together, and you'll see how simple it is to do. In a different file, I'll call it suite.js, but it doesn't matter. I'll import the basic components of Vest, and I showed them to you. Create a suite, write a test, and enforce. So import, create, enforce, and test from Vest. We're gonna import some more stuff, but that's okay for now. And I'll create a suite. Const suite equals create. And now it takes a callback function, and inside of it we pass some data. We'll initialize the data with an empty object, even though I don't expect it to be empty ever. And let's write a first test just to see if everything works correctly. And by the way, is it even visible? Yes. Okay. Let's do test for the field username. Username, yes, it's correct. And let's say username is required. By the way, if I make any errors while typing or make some JavaScript mistakes, take a picture, send it to me, and also let me know so I know. And do enforce, data.username, so you take the username value, is not blank. Now, this does not do anything yet because we did not connect it to the form. So let's just do this. We'll import our suite from the suite file. Import suite from suite. And now use it. The suite is a function, and all we have to do is just pass the data to it. So we take the next state and pass it to the suite, and then we can use the result in our UI. So let's do const result equals suite.get, which gives us the most up-to-date validation result. And I already make some typo. Oh no, I did not export the suite. Yes, told you to tell me. Export suite. Export default suite. Yes. Please gods. Please gods. No. Transpiling modules. Oh snap, we noticed that sandbox did not complete its last run. Yes, let's try again. Okay, let's try again. Yes, so we have the result, and now all we have to do is use it inside our form. So let's do messages equals res.getErrors from username. Now, if I typed username correctly in all the places, as I did not do here, we should see the result immediately when I type and remove. Username is required exactly as I stated up here. Oh, no, yes, exactly as I stated up here. Now let's do a few more. So let's do like, yeah, username is too short. Let's remove these. Username must be at least 3 chars long. Yes, longer than 2. And then let's duplicate this and say the same for password. Password longer than or equals, let's say 5 this time. Now I can copy the same thing that I've done for username. Or first let's do it just for username and not for password. I type inside and I see username is, oh, username must be without is. Yes, yes. Okay, and I type inside username must be at least 3 characters, and we see nothing for password because we did not connect them yet. So let's connect password as well. And all we have to do is copy the same line over, do it here the same way, and instead of username, type password. Word. Now, already we got password is required. We type inside password and we say password must be at least 5 characters, but I'll refresh and you'll all see the problem immediately. I type inside username and password lights up immediately, which is no fun because I'm the user and I don't want to see the validation errors for fields that I did not type in yet. So what I'm gonna do is just tell Vest, hey Vest, this is good for submit, but this is not good for just whenever I type. So let's do this. We take the name of the current field that's been updated. I have it from the input element and I pass it to the suite. And inside my suite, all I have to do is tell Vest, well, only validate that. So I take the name of the field, pass it to a function that comes from Vest called only. You see, we imported it, and that's it. I am only validating the field that the user is typing in. So if I type my name, we only see the validation for it, and if I type inside password, it only updates the password validation. So this is cool. But I also promised you colors like error and success and warnings, so let's do those as well. And now, Vest is not a UI framework, so it does not actually do UI, but it does come with some UI helpful utilities to help you work with it. So I'll do a bit of that. I'll take the class names function from Vest. Import class names from Vest class names. And what I do here is basically specify the names of the classes that should be visible whenever some validation rule is triggered. So let's do const cx. This is going to be a function that's been returned from class names, and it takes the result. And let's say when it's valid, do success. That's going to be the class name. And when it's invalid, let's do error. And when it's warning, let's just do warning. It's going to be simple. Now, if I typed everything correctly, again, let's do class names, or class name, equals CX for the field username. And the same I'm going to do for password. And you already see that it's getting red. I'll do the same and start typing example, and it's getting green. And I'll do the same here, example, and it's getting green. Now, what you see here is very simple, but one thing that's always tricky with form validation is disabling the submit button when the form is not valid yet. But luckily with VEST, it's pretty easy. All we have to do is basically ask if the form is valid. So let's do disabled equals res.isValid, but say not is valid really. That's all we have to do. And now the submit is gray, and I type inside username, and I type inside password, and it becomes green. Now you're asking about the confirm and the checkbox. Well, I did not add validations for them, so VEST does not know about them yet. Of course, when we write the form validations for them, we will see them as well, and it will be gray until they are filled as well. But I want to show you something different because I promised you a warning. And in the world of VEST, we have another type of form validation that I think almost all other frameworks and libraries pretty much ignore. And this is form validation that does not fail the validation, does not prevent submission. What example? Well, let's say password strength. Your password is too weak. We do let you continue, but you should know there's a problem here. And when you do it usually with different tools, what you have to do is like have a side or an escape hatch for that, because it should not pause the validation or pause the submission. Here in VEST, it's actually pretty simple, and you put it in the same place. All you have to do is something like this. Password is weak. Maybe add a number. And let's do a regular expression. By the way, we have like a billion validation rules that we can add. But here, let's do a regular expression and say, for example, has a number in it. And now, if I type inside a password, well, it's still red. But that's because we didn't tell VEST that it's going to be a warning. So let's do, all we have to do is tell VEST, well, then warn. Yeah, warn. And now, if I type inside a password, it will become orange. We do not see the message yet, but that's because we only asked VEST to show the passwords and the errors. Now let's tell it, because it's an array, let's tell it to show the errors. So what we have to do is basically, let's do something like this. Get errors and concat it with the get warnings of that same field. And now password is weak, maybe add a number, but let's say I type inside a username and we see that it does not fail the validation at all. But if I go back, oh yeah, it does. Awesome. Now, one more complex scenario that we have with form validations in regular frameworks is async validations. Now, what do I do with them? And this is really complex elsewhere, but really simple with VEST. And I'll show you what I mean. Here in our example, what I'll do is, let's say username is already taken. Let's say that username is already taken. Let's remove, let's show a spinner when the username, when we're typing inside a username. And if it's already taken, let's show an error. Now I don't have a backend attached, so I'll just mock my own function. And in VEST, it's very similar to unit testing libraries. We only have to pass a promise or an async function, which is actually the same. So let's do async function is user present and take the username. Now I'll do a wait, and wait is not related to VEST, it's just a function, a cool function. Wait for 1,000 milliseconds, and let's do enforce username is not inside, and let's say this is my database, not inside Yalush. That's my username. So now I'll just throw an error when the username is not inside is not inside an array with my username in it. So I have 5 minutes. Let's do it quick. I'll show the spinner when we type inside the username. So let's do the pending true. Yes. And now when I set the state and show the username, or type inside the username, let's also set the state and say show the spinner. So if current field equals username, let's show the spinner. So let's do set pending to true. Now inside our form or inside our suite, let's say that when we type inside username and username is already there, it will say username exists. We'll do an async function or just return the promise, return user, how did I call the function? Is user present, and pass the username, data.username. Now we'll show the spinner here, and when we're done, let's just, I don't know, remove the spinner. So set pending to false. Yes. So I'll type inside username, we see the spinner. Now I'll do my username, and we see that username exists. But you saw something, right? When I start typing inside the username field, we already see the spinner even though we know that the username is invalid to begin with. Well, Vest doesn't, but we can tell it very easily. Let's say only go to the server, so skip when, res, and then we can do res.hasErrors for username. So we're going to skip when we have validation errors for whatever it is that we do here. So if I type, we don't see the spinner at all, but if I type another character, it's there. But username is already taken, let's do another character, and if I remove, one other thing that bugs me is that I see the spinner again, even though we do know in the client that it's already taken. But we can do memoization, of course, but why do it if Vest can do it for you? And to memoize your validation result for a certain field, all you have to do is test.memo and pass some dependency array like data.username. And what happens now is, let's refresh, just so you see it up to date. I'll do my username. I'll add another character, we see the spinner again, and I'll remove, and you will not see the spinner because, well, it's locally saved. Cool, so we've seen Vest, and really all we had to do is write this suite that's really easy to maintain, really easy to read, it's well structured, we have different tests for each field, and also inside our feature, well, we added this, and, well, class names and call to that. Yeah, we didn't do much inside our feature, so we do not have any special feature code for Vest, just inside our feature, and it's really easy to remove, migrate. If we want to take this validation, actually I have this exact validation example in 4 different frameworks, both React, Angular, Vue, and Svelte. The same validation code, and just the UI component is different. So this is pretty easy and pretty cool, I think. So I've shown you this. If you want to see, by the way, and play with this playground, you can just take this QR code. I think it should work. I'll wait a second. And these are some of Vest's features that we've seen. It does a lot more than we've actually seen here, and more than we have here on the screen. But we have full TypeScript support. Vest is written in TypeScript. We have validation of changed field as the user is typing. We can do multiple validations per field, which is really difficult in different frameworks. We have warnings. We can have interdependent validations, meaning that we can very easily validate one field upon the value of a different field. It's framework agnostic. We have async validations. We can memorize these validations. We can group tests inside of groups. We can compose validation rules. We can extend, enforce, and add our own custom validations. And it's all structured and declarative. You can install it by npm install Vest. It's really easy. It's really lightweight, about 7 kilobytes. And in version number 5 that will come in 2023, it will be even less. This is the documentation website. It's pretty beautiful, I think. And if you want to learn more, you can follow me on all of these. You can go to the VEST website, you can go to the documentation website, to the repo, check it on NPM. You can join the Discord server, by the way, if you're on Discord. I'm pretty available over there. And that's it. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions.